I was just about to flip the sign on my studio door when she rushed in. You know that moment. Long day, heels biting, I'm dreaming of tea and silence, and suddenly a whirlwind appears. She was breathless, cheeks flushed, eyes darting like she'd just sprinted across town. For a second, I almost told her we were closed. But something in her voice, that desperate edge, stopped me cold. Please, I need a makeup appointment urgently. Tonight's important, she gasped, clutching her bag like it was her lifeline. I took a breath, forced a smile, and said, Of course I'll help. What's the occasion? That's me, professional to the bone. I've learned that sometimes women don't just need makeup. They need a shield, a way to face the world with their chin up. When she finally answered, it seemed harmless enough. A date with someone really special, she said, glowing like a teenager. I nodded, sliding my brushes into place, not giving it a second thought. Dates, anniversaries, blind dinners. I've done them all. Still, something about the way she said it. I couldn't have guessed then that her special someone was about to turn my entire night upside. I motioned for her to sit, the studio lights warming the air as I laid out my palette. My hands moved on autopilot, primer, foundation, brushes clinking softly, while my mind drifted to the way she kept glancing at her phone. Nervous energy practically buzzed off her. I see that a lot. Women on the edge of something big, needing me to make them feel invincible. It's part of why I love what I do. But that night, there was an edge to her excitement I couldn't quite put my finger on. She leaned back in the chair, finally letting herself breathe, and I caught her reflection in the mirror. There was this spark in her eyes, the kind that only comes from someone about to dive headfirst into romance. You look calm, I teased lightly, trying to ease her nerves. She laughed, a little too loud, and said, Trust me, I'm anything but. Something about the way she said it made me smile. It was sweet, innocent even, and I kept reminding myself, don't judge, just paint. The truth? In that moment, I felt almost protective of her. Whoever this special someone was, I hoped he knew how lucky he was. Her excitement was genuine, pure, the kind that makes you believe in fairy tales again. And as I worked, I thought about how often love brought women into my chair, chasing that shimmer of magic. Little did I know, her fairy tale was about to collide violently with my reality. As I blended color into her cheeks, I found myself curious. I always ask questions. It keeps the mood light, helps me understand the woman behind the face. So, I said casually, what makes tonight so special? Her lips curved into a smile that practically glowed. He's amazing, she whispered, almost to herself. I caught the way her hands trembled slightly in her lap, and it tugged at something in me. She wasn't just going on a date. She was stepping into something she'd been dreaming about for a while. I nodded, keeping my own expression soft. In my line of work, I've heard every kind of story. First dates, last chances, reconciliations. But there was something different in her tone, like she was already half in love with him. I brushed a soft highlight across her cheekbones, watching her face come alive in the mirror. For a moment, I envied her hope. That giddy anticipation is a rare, fragile thing, and she carried it like a secret. Still, a part of me felt unsettled. It was subtle, just a whisper in the back of my mind, but I couldn't shake it. Maybe it was the way she clutched her phone, or the way she described him, as if he were larger than life. At the time, I pushed it aside, focusing on my craft. But later, when the details started spilling out, I'd wish I had listened to that unease from the very beginning. As I smoothed the foundation across her skin, I decided to strike up some small talk. It's second nature to me. Silence in the chair can feel heavy, and besides, people open up when you ask the right questions. So I tilted my head, smiled in the mirror, and said, So, tell me about him. He must be quite the man. Her face lit up instantly, like I'd uncorked a bottle of excitement she'd been dying to share. He's tall, she said, her voice practically dancing. Always in suits, very charming. You know, the kind of man who walks into a room and owns it. I laughed lightly, brushing it off as polite chatter, but something in my stomach twisted. That description, it sounded so familiar. I kept my hand steady, but inside I felt a flicker of unease. She leaned forward a little, lowering her voice as if she were telling me a sacred secret. He works late all the time. Big job, lots of stress. But when he's with me, he makes me feel like I'm the only woman in the world. I forced a small laugh, nodding like it was just another love story, but my chest tightened. Those words, I'd heard them before, and not from her. I kept brushing carefully, making sure not to let my hand betray the sudden jolt in my chest. My job is to listen without showing too much, but inside I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. He sounds like he keeps you on your toes, I said lightly, hoping my voice didn't crack. She giggled, twirling a strand of hair, and replied, "Oh, you have no idea." Her words poured out like champagne, bubbly, overflowing, impossible to stop once uncorked. She told me how he always looked sharp, how he had this way of making her feel safe, yet excited at the same time. Every detail tightened the knot in my stomach, because everything she was saying didn't just sound familiar, it sounded painfully specific. I caught my own reflection in the mirror as I dabbed concealer under her eyes. My face looked calm, professional, but I could see the storm flickering in my eyes. She didn't notice, too wrapped up in her daydream. And I couldn't help but think, what are the odds? What are the chances that her mystery man was anything more than just a coincidence? I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was just my mind playing tricks. After all, plenty of men wear suits. Plenty of men claim they work late. But the way she described his charm, how he looked at her like she was the only woman alive, hit too close to home. My brush hovered for a second longer than it should have, before I forced myself back into rhythm. "Sounds like you've got yourself a real gentleman," I said softly, testing my own tone. She nodded eagerly, her cheeks flushing with a mix of pride and giddiness. Watching her glow, I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to protect that happiness for her. Another part of me wanted to dig deeper, peel back the layers of this story until I saw the truth hiding underneath. Inside, my heart was whispering a warning. But I wasn't ready to listen yet. Instead, I smiled, finishing the strokes across her jawline, and let her talk. She thought she was telling me about her dream man. What she didn't know was that she might have just started telling me about mine. By then, my curiosity had taken the wheel. I leaned in, brushing a soft layer of powder across her cheek, and asked casually, "And how long have you been talking to him?" She didn't hesitate for a second. "Months now," she said, her voice laced with pride, as if she'd been nurturing a secret garden no one else knew about. I nodded, but inside, my pulse picked up. Months. The word echoed in my head like a warning bell. She went on, smiling as she confessed, "He says he's technically married, but it's basically over. Tonight will be our first official date." My hand froze midair, brush suspended, heart slamming against my ribs. I forced my lips into something resembling a smile, but my world tilted sharply. Married, but basically over? That excuse was as old as time. And yet, hearing it fall so easily from her lips made me feel sick. Because in that instant, I knew the chances of coincidence were shrinking fast, and the shadow of recognition was growing darker. I tried to steady my hand, pressing the brush lightly against her skin as if nothing had changed. But my chest felt tight, like every breath was pushing against a wall. "So, he's married?" I asked gently, masking the tremor in my voice with practiced ease. She nodded, lowering her tone as though sharing a scandalous secret. "Yes, but he swears it's just paperwork at this point. His wife doesn't mean anything to him anymore." The words sliced through me. Paperwork. Just paperwork. I wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. Did she even realize the weight of what she was saying? My mind spun back to late nights when Michael came home tired, distracted, with that same line about stress and deadlines. Suddenly, those nights felt different, like puzzle pieces snapping into place, painting a picture I didn't want to see. Still, I didn't stop her. I couldn't. Instead, I let her keep talking, each sentence pulling me deeper into a nightmare I hadn't chosen. And all the while, I fought to keep my face still, my tone light, as if my entire life wasn't unraveling right there in the reflection of my own studio mirror. She kept going, unaware of the fire she'd lit inside me. He said tonight is different. He wants it to be special, a new beginning for us. Her eyes sparkled, her voice trembling with excitement. I forced myself to nod, though I felt my stomach knot tighter with every word. Because deep down, I already knew. Everything she described, his charm, his suits, his late nights, it all belonged to Michael. My Michael. I gripped the brush so hard my fingers ached, but I wouldn't let her see me break. Instead, I gave her the same calm expression I'd given countless women before her. She thought I was focused on her makeup, when really, I was holding my heart together with sheer will. My pulse roared in my ears, but outwardly, I was nothing but steady hands and practiced smiles. For the first time in years, I felt powerless in my own studio. The place that had always been my sanctuary suddenly turned into a stage where I had to play a role. And yet, a part of me knew, if she kept talking, if she gave me just one more detail, the truth I was terrified to face would no longer be avoidable. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed proof, something concrete to silence the war raging in my chest. So I tilted my head with what I hoped looked like curiosity, not desperation, and asked, "I'm curious, do you have a picture of him?" My voice sounded calm, casual even, but inside, I was bracing for impact. She laughed, pulling out her phone like it was the easiest request in the world. "Of course. Isn't he handsome?" she said as her fingers danced across the screen. My throat tightened, and for a split second, I prayed. Actually prayed that I was wrong. That it would be another man, someone else's husband, someone else's problem. But then she turned the screen toward me. And there he was, Michael. Smiling, charming, every detail unmistakable. My Michael, staring back at me from another woman's phone. My hand trembled so violently I nearly dropped the brush. In that instant, every ounce of air seemed to leave the room. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. My God, it was him. Michael. The man I'd built a life with, the man whose ring still rested heavy on my finger. For a moment, the room blurred around me, colors bleeding together as if even reality couldn't bear to hold steady. My heart hammered so hard I thought she might hear it, but instinct kicked in. Years of painting on smiles for clients had taught me how to wear a mask, and that mask became my lifeline. I forced my lips into a faint smile, nodding like it was nothing more than a polite compliment. Inside, though, I was screaming, every nerve ending alive with betrayal, anger, and disbelief. She beamed at me, oblivious, tapping the screen like she was showing off a prize. "Isn't he just perfect?" she asked, her voice thick with admiration. I wanted to shout the truth, to tear the phone from her hands and throw it across the room. Instead, I swallowed the fire burning in my chest and whispered, "Yes, he certainly is." I turned back to my brushes, gripping them as though they were anchors keeping me from collapsing. Every motion became mechanical. Dip, sweep, blend, while my mind spiraled out of control. I wanted to ask her how they met, what lies he'd spun, but the words caught in my throat. If I spoke, the mask would slip, and I wasn't ready to let her or anyone see my storm. Inside, it felt like something had cracked open, raw and jagged. My marriage, my trust, my peace, all shattered in one careless moment with a swipe of her thumb. And yet, she sat there glowing, smiling at me like we were sharing a secret. If only she knew the truth, that the wife she thought was basically out of the picture was the very woman holding the brush against her cheek. I forced myself to breathe, to channel the rage into precision. Stroke by stroke, I painted her face into perfection, even as my own heart fractured. And with every brush of color, I promised myself one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time I finished her look, my face hurt from holding a smile. On the outside, I was every inch the professional. Steady hands, soft compliments, calm tone. But inside, I was a storm ripping through its own silence. I dabbed the final bit of lipstick, stepped back, and said, "You look stunning." My voice sounded smooth, but underneath, It carried an edge even she didn't catch. She twirled in the chair, eyes wide with admiration at her own reflection. "Where are you two going tonight?" I asked, forcing the words out like small talk, though the answer already burned in my chest before she spoke. "A downtown restaurant," she said brightly. "He told me it's our little secret." I felt my jaw clench so tight it nearly cracked. Still, I managed a smile that looked polite but tasted bitter on my lips. "Perfect," I told her, my tone sugar-laced with something sharper. "I hope the night is truly unforgettable." And oh, I meant every word. She stood, smoothing her dress, her excitement practically radiating off her. I watched her gather her purse and check her lipstick one last time, humming softly like a woman who believed she was stepping into a dream. My stomach churned, but I didn't flinch. I had already decided I would not give her the satisfaction of knowing what her words and that photo had done to me. When she thanked me, I nodded, my smile frozen in place, every muscle in my face aching from restraint. "Enjoy your evening," I said smoothly, as if I hadn't just watched my entire marriage collapse in real time. She had no idea her perfect night was already unraveling, no clue that the wife she believed was out of the picture was watching her every move. The door clicked shut behind her, and that's when I let myself exhale, shaky, sharp, like a balloon hissing its last bit of air. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I didn't think, I just acted, dialing the one person I knew I could trust with this storm inside me. When my best friend answered, I didn't bother with pleasantries. My voice came out in a furious whisper, sharp enough to cut glass. "He's taking her to dinner, tonight. I saw his face on her phone. Michael, it's him." Saying it aloud made the betrayal feel heavier, more real, as if each word was another stone strapped to my chest. My friend stayed silent for a moment, letting the weight sink in, before answering with the steadiness I needed. "You can't let this slide, Rosie," she said firmly. And she was right. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore, from rage. Rage that he thought he could live two lives, one with me and one with her, as if I were blind and deaf. Rage that he underestimated me so completely. I straightened my shoulders, pacing the studio like a caged animal. The brushes and palettes around me suddenly looked like weapons of a different kind, tools I had used to build women up, now symbols of the strength I needed for myself. One thing was certain. Tonight wasn't just going to be their secret. It was going to be my stage. I walked into that restaurant with my heart pounding like a war drum. The soft clinking of glasses, the low hum of laughter, the warm glow of chandeliers. It all felt like a stage set for betrayal. My eyes scanned the room, and there they were, Michael and her, leaning close, laughing over a glass of wine like they'd known each other for years. For a moment, I stood frozen, taking in the scene I'd never imagined I'd see with my own eyes. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I made my way toward their table. Every step was deliberate, measured, echoing louder in my head than the chatter around me. People turned to look, but I didn't care. My anger burned too brightly to be dimmed by curious stares. When I reached them, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calm, sharp words cut deeper than any scream. "Well," I said, my tone steady, "isn't this cozy? Michael, imagine my surprise, meeting your date earlier in my chair." His fork clattered against the plate, and just like that, the whole room shifted its gaze toward us. The woman's face drained of color, her smile collapsing as she stared at me. "Wait! Your wife?" she gasped, her voice rising just enough to catch the attention of the tables nearby. Whispers rippled through the room like a wave. Michael's eyes went wide, his jaw working desperately as if words might save him. "Rosie, it's not what it looks like," he started, his voice shaky. I leaned in, my hands steady on the edge of their table, and locked my eyes on his. "No," I said firmly, my voice low but clear enough for every eavesdropping ear to catch. "It's exactly what it looks like, and everyone here can see it too." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the clink of a glass somewhere in the distance. He reached out as if to grab my wrist, but I pulled back, standing tall. The shame written across his face was almost satisfying, but not nearly enough. I wanted him to feel the weight of every eye in that restaurant, to know he hadn't just betrayed me. He'd exposed himself. And I made sure he understood that tonight, there would be no hiding. The room felt electric, every pair of eyes locked on us as if waiting for the next blow to land. The woman sank back in her chair, her fork untouched, her confidence shattered. Michael's lips kept moving, stammering excuses, but I cut through his noise like a blade. You lied to me, to her, to everyone. And now look, you've managed to humiliate yourself without me lifting a finger. A murmur spread through the tables, diners exchanging glances, some shaking their heads, others smirking knowingly. I could feel the weight of their silent judgment pressing down on him, stripping away the charm he always wore like armor. His cheeks flushed red, his hands trembling as he fumbled with his napkin, desperate to regain control. But it was too late. I stood there tall, collected, my voice steady while his world crumbled in front of strangers. Enjoy your dinner, I told them coldly, my eyes lingering on Michael for one last piercing second. Then I turned, heels clicking against the floor, and walked out, leaving him exposed in the wreckage he had created. A week later, I sat across from my lawyer in a quiet office that smelled faintly of old books and fresh coffee. My hands rested firmly on the table, no longer shaking, no longer unsure. He glanced at the papers before him, then at me. You have every right to file, he said gently. Do you want to pursue the infidelity clause? His words carried weight, but my answer was already formed deep inside me. I shook my head, my voice calm and steady. I don't want his money. I want my freedom. Saying it out loud felt like unclipping a chain I didn't even realize I'd been dragging for years. The lawyer nodded, making his notes, but I could see the faintest glimmer of respect in his eyes. He knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself. In that moment, I realized how much strength had been growing quietly in me, hidden beneath the hurt. I wasn't that woman frozen in her own studio, brush trembling in her hand. I was someone different now, someone who had walked into fire, seen the truth, and decided to walk out whole. And that decision was mine alone. When I got home that night, Michael was waiting, his eyes swollen, his voice raw from pleading. Rosie, please. We can fix this, he begged, his hands reaching for me like I was something slipping through his fingers. Once, those words would have cracked me, would have made me bend. But now, they sounded empty, like echoes in a hollow room. I stood tall, my arms crossed, meeting his desperate gaze with a cold, steady smile. Fix what? I asked softly, the words sharp as glass. You broke it beyond repair. He stumbled, searching for the charm that had once worked on me, but I didn't see the man I had loved anymore. I saw a stranger, weak and trembling, stripped of every illusion he had wrapped himself in. Get out, I said, the command falling from my lips with a finality that startled even me. He froze, realizing I meant it. That was the moment I felt something shift inside me, like a door slamming shut, like a chapter ending with a single powerful stroke of the pen. For the first time, the silence between us didn't feel empty. It felt free. The days that followed felt lighter, as if I'd peeled off a skin that no longer belonged to me. I poured myself into my studio, welcoming clients with a new kind of energy, one born not from perfection, but from survival. Women admired my work, but what they didn't know was that behind every brushstroke was a woman who had chosen herself over betrayal. And strangely, that choice made me shine brighter. One evening, as I locked up after a long day, I caught my reflection in the glass door. The same face stared back at me, but the eyes were different, clearer, stronger, unafraid. I whispered to myself, not out of habit, but as a declaration. He thought I'd fall apart without him. But the truth is, I shine brighter alone. The words didn't sting. They healed. And just like that, I walked into the night air, my steps steady, my heart light. The city hummed around me, alive with possibility, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because this story wasn't about losing him anymore. It was about finally finding me.